This year might just be the right year to invest in property. But before you jump in, do you have a low-rate investment loan pre-approved? It might be the right time to invest, but the wrong loan could dent your prospects for achieving the maximum return. Are you armed with the best finance at the sharpest rate? Find out with Finny. Call us now on 1300 002 023 and find out what you could save. Or visit our website, finny.com.au to book an appointment.
This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. I am Grace Ormsby, and I'm so excited to be bringing you another investor update. These are the bread and butter of what we talk about here on the Smart Property Investment Show, finding out from real-life investors what they've been going through. And today we're actually lucky enough to be getting an investor update. Our guest today was last on the show in April 2020. So if you cast your mind back a little bit, right at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. It is a pleasure to welcome him back. Jason Chapman, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here again.
Jason, it's probably a little bit of deja vu for you, given that, really, April 2020, that was when we first sort of really got into Zoom podcasting. You were on the show then with Phil, but same process as now. Does it feel like it was 3 years ago now?
It doesn't feel like it was that long ago. Funnily enough, I was actually in the studio that time, whereas now it's via Zoom.
You got in just before the pandemic.
Right before everything, all the lockdowns and everything else happened. So that was pretty cool.
Wow.
So I'm still adjusting to the whole Zoom thing for a lot of things.
Yeah, a lot's changed in the last 3 years. I didn't realize it was just before that would have all gone down, but wow. Even just thinking back to then, for everyone who wants to go check out the episode, please do. Why this property investor is adamant about insurance. Jason, since then, 3 years, as I just said, has gone past. Where has that time gone? I'm not sure. But before we start talking about the update and the fact that you've had some new stuff going on over the last 36 months, what point were you at in your property investing portfolio and journey back in 2020?
So back then I had my first investment property, which was I actually purchased my first property before I bought a house. And then a few years later, we purchased my principal place of residence, which is where I still am now in Newcastle, in a little suburb called Holmesville. And I think at that stage I was just gearing up and working out where I wanted to buy next. And that was amongst a lot of the doom and gloom, and with COVID really kicking off, a lot of people are going, man, what are you doing? You're crazy. Why do you want to buy property? And I saw it as a golden opportunity and was pretty keen on buying. And I actually did end up purchasing something not too long after I was on the show, which ended up being on the north side of Brisbane in Clontarf. So that's been a great little spot there. And from there, I've just continued purchasing a few more along the way. And to be honest, I don't have any plans on stopping anytime soon. It's just going to be a matter of trying to navigate the finance side of things going forward now, I think.
Very cool. Well, so much for us to be unpacking today. Before we do get to even that first Clontarf purchase, the Brisbane one, talk us through that first investment property that you bought and why you made the decision to get into property investing in the first place.
Sure thing. So that first one, I was very, very green to the world of property investing. I'd not long come out of my time as an apprentice and managed to lock down a full-time job there. So I was pretty happy with that. And I always sort of knew that I wanted to buy or get into property. My parents had a few investment properties over the years, and I'd sort of seen that it had worked for them. And, I was living at home at the time. I was very comfortable. It didn't cost me a lot of money. So I thought, well, I don't need to go and buy a house for myself to live in because I've got it good at home, but I want to get into property. So, of course, that led me down the investment road. And so we ended up going and having a look at a few different places local to us here in Newcastle. And we settled on a place. It was actually in a suburb called Bolton Point, which is it's near Lake Macquarie. Not a particularly great area by any instances, but it was a good price range. It was a 4-bedroom on a good sized block of land. And from where that is, 2 streets away, there was $1 million houses on the water. So I thought, well, eventually this is going to work out pretty well for me. That's about the logic that I had in my head is, there's nice places nearby, so it's got to have some sort of effect later on down the road. And so, yeah, we ended up purchasing there. I think that was in 2016 or thereabouts, and end of 2016. So that was my first sort of foray into the world of property.
There you go. And you're saying was it just yourself or a partner or?
At that stage, it was just myself, yeah. So it's just something that I wanted to do to dip my toe in. And then not too long after that, I met my partner. And so I was still living at home at the time, and she was still living at her parents' place. And then my sister moved back home, and I decided I didn't want to deal with that anymore. So we'd been together a few months, and I said, rightio, let's move out together. We'll rent a place and see if we don't kill each other, and to make sure that we can actually get along well, which surprisingly we did.
A good test, though.
It definitely is, yes. And after we lived together for a couple of months, I was renting a separate shed, like an industrial shed for some cars and tools and things like that. And so I thought, well, I'm sick of paying 2 rents. I want to buy a house now that we're moved out. Instead of paying 2 rents, I'll buy a house with a shed, and that way I can put all my, cars and tools and bits and pieces in there. So we started hunting for a house, and we ended up purchasing here in Holmesville not too long after that. And so we've been here ever since. It's a nice little place, nice half an acre, decent sized shed for all the tools. Never big enough, but it was big enough for
you
what
could
I needed
probably
at the
buy
time.
the biggest property ever, and I'm guessing it wouldn't be big enough, Jason.
That's right. Yeah, there's no such thing as the shed that's too big.
So that first property, do you still own it? I'm curious if you've still got your principal place of residence, but that first property that you purchased, is it still on your books?
It is, yes. I'm yet to sell any of my properties. I'm definitely a buy and hold sort of person personally. So when I purchased it, it came with a tenant, and I can't remember if it was the first tenant or the one after that, but for whatever reason, they decided to drag a backyard fire pit towards the house, and that actually set the house back half of the house on fire. So I had to go through insurance and sort all that out. But once all that was done, I paid some extra, got the house painted. I did a few other bits and pieces, just tidied it up a bit more. And so I ended up with, a fresher house, and I was able to rent that for a bit more money. So even though a lot of people might go, oh, that's a horrible thing to happen, which it was, it ended up being a benefit in the long run anyway. So yeah, it's still chugging along quite nicely now. It's probably about double-ish what I've paid for it. And yeah, still rented, and haven't really had any dramas with it since.
Yeah, and I mean, Lake Macquarie has gone crazy through the roof house prices since COVID, and you probably weren't anticipating that kind of world disruption, but it's paid off, that investment decision, I'm sure, Jason.
Yeah, it definitely has. I'm quite happy with that one. So yeah, I have no plans of getting rid of that one, and that's just going to sit there nicely. It's something that's always going to be in demand. A 4-bedroom house, decent sized block of land, and there's always going to be people that want to live there and want to rent it. It's close to the lake and schools and things like that. Close to the freeway if you did need to sort of commute down to Sydney or Central Coast or something like that. So I mean, Newcastle's a great place. I've lived here my whole life, and I personally wouldn't want to live anywhere else long term. So it's a great spot, that's for sure.
There you go. So, I mean, that as well is probably a good reminder to bring up that it is an investor update. You've been on the show before, and you talked more in depth about some of that insurance stuff that you went through on why this property investor is adamant about insurance. So if you want to check out Jason's backstory there, check it out. April 2020 was when it was released on the Smart Property Investment Show Network. So, but we've got an update to give. So we might go to a quick break there, but on the other side, we're going to find out more about what he's been doing in the 3 years since. So don't go away. See you on the other side of the break. Are you looking to create passive income through property? Simon Liu from Housefinder has achieved over $700,000 per annum in passive income by only buying genuinely off-market, below-market value and cash flow positive houses within major capital cities. For the past 7 years after quitting his day job, he has been helping others achieve similar goals to reach financial freedom. On average, his clients achieve $80,000 plus equity extractions from the houses they find, all within 6 months of buying. Visit housefinder.com.au to find out more. Welcome back to this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. I'm joined by Jason Chapman. Jason, just before the break, you were talking about your first investment property purchase. And then since then, you'd bought a principal place of residence. And that's where our kind of story ended the last time that you were on the show. But 3 years later, you're back with an update and you've got a few more properties under your belt. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about them. So We've mentioned the Brisbane property. Why? I mean, it was a scary time, but you seem to think it was, an opportunity from the outset. Was there any doubts in your head about continuing on with property at that time?
Not at all. So I think it's one of those things. I really hate the quote because it's so overused, the Warren Buffett quote. I'm not even going to say it because I'm sure we all know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But I just saw that as a great opportunity because everybody was not sure what was going on. They didn't want to do anything. They sort of sat on their hands. And I could just sort of see, the markets and things were changing a little bit in that sense. So there was going to be a lot of opportunities to pick up something that otherwise might have had a lot more competition or things like that. So that's what kind of led me to go, well, I'm going all in on this. I wish I'd have been able to buy 10 at the time. I would have bought 10 in that time period, much to sort of everybody else is going, oh, what are you doing? But no doubts in my mind at all going forward and continuing to sort of build this portfolio out.
So why Brisbane?
Look, I had a lot of good drivers going for it at the time. I felt that I already had a pretty good coverage here in Newcastle between my principal place of residence and my first investment property. So I wanted to sort of venture around. And I've always been a bit of there was some good returns up there as well. So I've always sort of had that mindset that I don't really want to be shelling out all this extra money from my back pocket that's going to affect my lifestyle to try and build this portfolio. So I was really looking for, a nice balance of somewhere that's got a lot of good drivers and something that's going to give me a decent return and not going to cost me a lot of money. So that's sort of what led me up there. And yeah, in the end, I think at the time I was trying to work out if I was going to go north side or south side. I know there's a lot of people that sort of were rushing into Logan, but I ended up deciding to go on the north side, and I picked up a duplex or a dual key older place. And it's been a great little spot since then. It's out on the Redcliffe Peninsula. And I actually bought that all sort of online because we were in the midst of lockdowns.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah. So I couldn't get there myself even if I wanted to. But Queensland at the time weren't in lockdown. So I spoke to the agent about it, and I actually rang up a friend and said, hey, mate, if you've got nothing on, do you reckon you could go and check out a house for me? He's like, oh, yeah, all right, I guess so. So he's turned up and just sort of did a bit of a quick walkthrough for me. I think that maybe one of the bedrooms he couldn't get into or something like that. There was something funny about it. And the tenants are a bit sort of coy because I think they were the greatest tenants, and they might have had some suspicious stuff in there at the time. But look, we did the video walkthrough, and I put my offer in. It went to multiple offer, and I ended up securing it. And yeah, the rest is sort of history, as they say, from there. So that was good. It came with some tenants. The upstairs tenants, like I said, were a bit ordinary. So I think once we settled on the property, the police had to turn up there multiple times because of domestic disturbances and things like that. So we ended up sort of giving those guys the flick, but not before they managed to damage the place as well. So they sort of punched holes in the walls and damaged the oven and ripped off some blinds and things like that. So just another thing that you sort of got to deal with in in the day of the life of a property investor, I suppose. So yeah, that was a bit of fun.
Was it ever off-putting having that kind of tenant experience, or does it just feel like it is part and parcel of what you kind of go into expecting? I guess you'd already had the fire issue previously, so you weren't going in with your eyes closed. You knew what could happen.
Yeah. Look, it's not something that anybody wants to have to go through, but I mean, these things happen. So if these are the kinds of risks or things that you just think that you wouldn't be able to deal with at all at any point, then it's probably not the right kind of asset class for you to be getting into. So I just take it on the chin and just go, all right, well, what's this going to mean and how do we get over this and make it better? So similar sort of story. It got a little bit of a minor renovation upstairs, and I got some better tenants in after that anyway. So, all's well that ends well in that sense.
Yeah. And was it at all daunting to be doing that online when you probably hadn't planned that would be your strategy? You seem like someone who would normally go and check it out yourself.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to go and check things out myself. Obviously, if I can't get there, I'm also happy to sort of do things. That's, I think, an important part of when you're investing properties. As long as you've got somebody there to check it out for you, and you've got your good team, so you're building and pest guys. So if you have missed something, because I'm not a builder by trade, so I mean, I can walk through a property and there might be something major that I've missed, for example, and that's where having a building and pest person that's, a qualified builder and has that experience under their belt, they're sort of that extra backup and additional checks for you. So if there is something majorly wrong, you would hope that they'd be able to pick that up for you. So it's never really been too much of an issue for me to go, oh, I haven't physically walked through it, so I'm not comfortable with buying it. That's never been too much of a problem for me in that sense.
So talk us through the actual specs of that property. Obviously, 2 lots of tenants. You've got upstairs and downstairs, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Upstairs and downstairs. So upstairs is a 2-bedroom unit, I suppose you could call it, flat. Downstairs is a 1-bedroom. So it's been a great little renter. So at the moment, it's rented out for about $485 a week in total. So that was pretty good. That was a purchase price around 360. So that's been good. That's probably worth somewhere, I don't know, maybe the 650 mark now, somewhere around that. So that's not a bad little gain in the last 2 or so years. So I've been pretty happy with that. Yeah, a couple of tenants coming and going over the time. I actually went up there after the lockdowns were over with my dad. I dragged him up there with me, and we did some renovations on the downstairs unit. So I had a friend come in and put some new kitchen cabinetry in, and we just did a bit of a paint and tidy up, and just all the little things that sort of make it a little bit of a nicer place to rent. So, yeah, I'm a big believer in being able to get in and sort of manufacture a little bit of equity and hopefully a bit of extra rental return as well.
Yeah, for sure. So with that purchase, when you did actually buy that place, sorry, I'm flicking a little bit back and forth here. How did you pull together the deposit? Was it something that you'd saved up separately, or did you draw back on equity from the previous purchases?
So that one, I think I purchased in the middle of 2020. I can't remember the exact month, but the deposit for that one actually came from my first property at Bolton Point. So I had actually saved a deposit to buy Bolton Point and had the money sitting there ready to go. But my parents stepped in and said, look, we know you're capable of saving your deposit. We know you're good with your money. So they were kind enough to jump in and go guarantor for me on that one. And then as time went on and obviously the value of that went up, I was able to release that guarantor part and refinance and extract the equity. And that was what we used, as the deposit for the Brisbane property.
There you go. So, I mean, it's testament to the work that you'd obviously done in the lead up, almost like homework for the next lot of purchases. So what then did you do? That was obviously another good experience for you to be buying in 2020. What was next?
So after that, I ended up going across and purchased in Bundaberg. Mm-hmm. So similar sort of thing. Again, I'm a bit of a cash flow sort of focused person. So this was another sort of dual key type thing. It was an old house, I think, at some stage that had been converted to similar thing, 1-bedroom, one side, 2-bedroom on the other side. This place I'm still actually yet to see in person. I haven't seen it in person at all, but it's been great. We purchased that in about December 2021, I think it was. And it's been great. It's been the most worry-free, hassle-free property, had sort of a couple of tenants as they move out, the 1-bedroom, they might get a partner or something and move out. But honestly, I haven't had any dramas at all with that place. It's been really smooth sailing. So knowing my luck, touch wood, I've probably just put my foot in it, and I'm about to get a phone call from a property manager saying something horrible's gone wrong. But
I'll touch wood as well for you from this end.
Hopefully that one's doing all right. And so, that's been another great little one. And then after that, we purchased last year, around the middle of last year, in Toowoomba. And funnily enough, same thing again, upstairs, downstairs, except this one's a 3-bedroom downstairs, 2-bedroom upstairs. Mm-hmm. This one's an older sort of building. It was like a concrete style thing with a big landing. And I picked it up knowing that the roof had some leaks in it. So there was still a lot of competition on this one when we went in and purchased it, even with like the obvious signs of the roof leaking. So I think that in the end, it hit the market on, I think, the Thursday. I spoke to the agent Thursday evening. I was on the phone to him for probably an hour, just talking all things property with him. He was very easy to get along with. They had an open on the Friday. And then on the Saturday was when they picked an offer. I think he said that there was 18 offers on the table, and they ended up, there's a lot of competition. And so we got it on the Saturday from there. So, I was pretty happy with that purchase there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very quick turnaround. You obviously were primed and ready to go, pull the trigger as soon as something suitable did come on the market then.
Yeah, so like anything, I think it's about being prepared and sort of knowing what you can put together in the background as well. So I get along very well with my broker as well. So I said, look, what's the sort of time frame turnaround for our approvals and things like that? And he said, look, at the moment, they're actually pretty quick. So when I put my offer in for this place at Toowoomba, I think I put a 10-day finance clause in there or something. And even the agent was like, are you sure that 10 days is going to be enough? I said, look, mate, my broker's assured me. He's like, wow, I need the name of your broker, I think, because that's crazy. So I think that was part of the reason that we ended up getting that one as well. So with those two purchases, what did you pick up both of them for, if you don't mind me asking? So the one in Bundaberg was I think 313,000, and so it rents out for $520 a week combined. So that's a great little
Positive
return on that one.
Very good cash flow there.
Yep. And then the one in Toowoomba, we picked that up for about 360,000. Obviously, like I said, I knew that it needed a little bit of work done on the roof, which the roof has since been done, and I'm just doing a few other bits and pieces on there at the moment. Dad was lucky enough to get dragged up there for that one at the end of last year as well to do a little bit of work on that one. So same thing again. I sort of enjoy buying these older type places and, just giving them a bit of a freshen up to sort of help manufacture that equity and a better rental return on the way in there as well. So upstairs is currently vacant at the moment with the roof and a few other bits and pieces going on, but we've just had another tenant going downstairs now. So that one's, it's another great little property once we get that fully tenanted again and all the work's completed.
I'm impressed you keep finding these because they're not quite duplexes, are they? But they're your dual key, as you said, finding these places over and over again and getting the same kind of success with them. But it makes total sense. Has it been your strategy to go for those, or have you just been lucky and found them each time when you've been looking for a new place?
It's pretty much been luck in that sense. It's not something that I've specifically gone after. I just sort of look at the numbers and see if the numbers make sense. So if there's a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom house on a decent sized block of land and the numbers stack up, then I'm more than happy to buy that. But these ones just happen to sort of come up at the right time at the right price. And so when I see something, I jump on it, and I've been pretty lucky with that so far.
And I'm also curious with the 1-bedroom and the 2-bedroom places, because a lot of people would be a bit turned off by those. Obviously, there are a lot of investors in those spaces as well, but would you normally go for a 1-bedroom place, or is it just that you've got those dual incomes, like the capacity there, that it doesn't really worry you as much?
Because all of the ones that I've purchased so far, so they've been all on the one title. So I own the entire thing. So I would never go out and purchase, say, a 1-bedroom unit in isolation or a 2-bedroom unit. Units are not something that I've ever been interested in. They just, for me, they don't make sense because, as everybody knows, the land appreciates, the building depreciates. So even though it's a 1-bedroom, because I have the entire asset, it's not a concern to me, because while a lot of people, like I mentioned earlier, wouldn't go in and buy a 1-bedroom unit, and I certainly wouldn't, I do know that there is still a market there for that kind of thing, because it's obviously a more affordable price point. So for, people that are single, or, they're just moving out in their first place together, that's obviously a lot more attractive for a tenant's perspective than having to fork out, $500, $600, $700 for an entire house when there's only one or two of them in there. So I always know that I'm going to have somebody in there. And because it's coupled with the fact that it's got the other unit on top or next to it or whatever, it just makes sense overall. So that's never been a concern for me there either.
Yeah, cool. So I'm counting through these. I think we've gone through 5 properties now, which means off air, you told me that you've got 6 properties at the moment. And is there still one that we haven't talked about? Because otherwise I've got my wires completely crossed.
Yes, no, there is one more.
Great. I'm trying to keep up.
Yeah, that's all right. So the last one that we purchased, the most recent purchase, was in October 2022 last year. So that one was actually a commercial property over in Perth. So that was a good little find, that one. It's just got like a sign shop in there. I picked it up for $485,000, and it rents for about $520 a week or somewhere around there, I think. And they pay all the outgoings as well. So again, just a numbers sort of based decision. And again, that's been a good little one. I mean, there's not a lot to go wrong really with a sort of industrial warehouse shed type setup.
Whereabouts exactly in Perth? Is it in a city or?
It's in a suburb called Kenwick, so a bit of an industrial estate in there. So it's 1 unit in a complex of, I think, 18 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I was happy with that sort of thing, because previously renting industrial sheds when I was younger for all my cars and things like that, I understand that there's always a need for that sort of warehouse, sort of multiple use type thing. So it's always going to be pretty easy to find a tenant if that ever does happen to go vacant for whatever reason.
And I'm guessing that diversification was very much the name of the game when you went for that property.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that it's important not to put all your eggs in one basket and buy just in one location or even just one state necessarily. There can be a bunch of different things happening. I know that like land tax and things like that can play into a lot of people's strategy. Again, you got to be careful with that, because policies can change, like even with the most recent announcement from Queensland government about what they were trying to do there. There's a lot
that
of
would have
people
stressed you out for a little while.
It didn't really worry me too much because, again, I was always in the camp. It's either going to go one of two ways. It's either going to be shut down and everybody's going to say, nope, that's silly, we're not going to go for it, and then it's not going to be a problem. Or it was going to work and then every other state and territory was going to follow suit and go, hey, that's a great idea, we want to do the same thing. And so it wouldn't have mattered whether it was Queensland or Tasmania. But that's how I always sort of saw it. And I think that's important not to worry about the things that you can't change and just focus on what you can change and just make sure that you get all those sort of fundamental type things right, because that way you're always going to do well instead of being at the mercy of somebody else.
Some very good insight there. I think that's a perfect time to take a break and come back and see what's next for Jason Chapman. See you on the other side.
Would you like the latest news and insights in HR, leadership and people management? HR Leader has you covered. Subscribe at hrleader.com.au.
Welcome back to this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. I'm joined by Jason Chapman in this investor update. Last time Jason was on the show, it was 2020. Why this property investor is adamant about insurance. If you want to go check it out, if you're interested in the story that Jason's been telling. So just before the break, we were talking about that sixth property purchase, Jason. I'm very curious. Where do you go from here? You've got two in New South Wales, Newcastle area. You've got three up in Queensland, one in WA, that's a commercial property. What do you do next?
Well, I think it's just a matter of buying, again, for me, where the numbers make sense. So that could be anywhere in the country. It just depends on sort of where the market's at in that particular time. So the biggest struggle, I think, at the moment for a lot of people going forward is going to be finance. So obviously with the rates going up, it's making it harder for people to get additional borrowing. So obviously that's going to affect the market in different areas. If you're in a highly leveraged market, then it's probably not going to go so well in the next, short to medium term, I suppose. Obviously long term, everything's probably going to work out quite all right. But yeah, it's just a matter of finding places that make sense and being able to get the finance. So for me personally, that's going to be the biggest key, is finding out, working with my broker and getting him to work his magic and being able to say, yep, okay, here you go. You've got this much to go and spend again, because I love going shopping. I find it very,
I was going to ask, are you getting ready to pull the trigger again yet?
I'm actually doing some refinancing at the moment to extract some equity to do a bit more work on my Toowoomba property. And so we'll see how we go with the leftover funds from that, if I'm able to secure another loan and continue purchasing from there, or whether I need to sit on the sidelines for a little while longer and just wait for some different things to change. I've had about 4 months of holidays in the last 7 or so months. So that hasn't exactly helped my borrowing capacity in any sense. So he sort of gave me the tap and said, you need to stop going on holidays and maybe I can help you out a little bit more here.
I mean, that's a first world problem right there, Jason.
Exactly right. So yeah, it's just going to be a matter of going forward, getting some money, and then as soon as I get that pre-approval, going shopping and finding something that makes sense again for me.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're, looking in one particular area or, focused on doing one particular thing. That would almost make it harder, it feels, when you've got such broad parameters. But is that what you really love about it? Just, having this such a big scope to go out and just find something that does really, really suit you?
Yeah, I think that's, I enjoy being able to look in multiple locations. Just because something's in your backyard doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the best investment for you, which, purchasing my first property, obviously I didn't know half of what I know now. Hindsight's a bit of a wonderful thing in that sense. But yeah, I think it's good to be able to look and be open-minded and a bit of a borderless investor, because depending on your circumstances and what's going to work is going to determine where you want to buy and what sort of asset you want to buy. So it's definitely, just finding out what makes sense and going from there kind of thing. But like anything, you sort of got to work from the top down. There's no point looking at purchasing a property in Sydney if you've only got a budget of $400,000, for example. So, price point sort of a good starting factor. And then from there, it's filtering down and just working out where the best locations are from there kind of thing.
Absolutely. So long term, you said there's no signs of slowing down for you. What is the ultimate end goal for property investing for you?
So the original aim is to replace my income and be able to, I'm not sure I could ever sit on a beach drinking cocktails somewhere. I don't think that's quite me, although I probably do quite a bit of
I mean, you just said
traveling.
You've been on holidays. for a lot of the last 7 months. So
yeah, I couldn't stay in one place for too long. I think I'd definitely be traveling around. But yeah, look, I think that the sort of the income goal changes the more you sort of progress down this rabbit hole of property investing. I definitely enjoy the process as well, so that helps. I think if you got to be drag kicking and screaming, then you might stop at 1 or 2 and go, yep, no, that's enough. I'm not interested in that anymore. But because I really enjoy the process, I think I'll just continue going until I either find something something else that I really enjoy doing, or I can't do it anymore, kind of thing. So we'll just see how we're going at the moment. So I think at the moment, my portfolio would sit somewhere around the $3.5 million mark, LVR high 60s, thereabouts. That'll probably change a little bit with this refinancing, and then obviously if I purchase something else. But
not a bad spot to be in, though, at this point in time, given, we're seeing so many people's mortgages go up so much. To still be around that 60% is pretty good.
Yeah, it's not too bad at all. I got a lot of people that sort of say, oh, you've got all these properties, you worry about the rates going up and this and that. And I say, well, not really. It's not what I want, of course, but the low interest rate environment that we've been in isn't exactly normal. So we're sort of getting back to a bit of a sense of normality. And again, it all sort of comes back to being able to put things in place. So if you're really redlining your borrowing capacity all the time and you don't have any savings or any type of buffers, it's probably not a good time to be sort of jumping into things. Whereas because of what I've been buying, and they've all been quite positively geared, I still haven't had to dip into my pocket to pay for any of the loans on those as of yet for anything else. So it's not impacting my lifestyle, which has always been a pretty high goal for me in that sense. So, I'll just continue to go forward and buy places I think that make sense like that. And hopefully, don't cost me too much going forward or impact me in that sense going forward.
Good on you. Before I do let you go, because this has been an absolutely great episode, and people should be taking notes if they haven't already. There's been some great insight and words of wisdom peppered throughout this. So go back and listen to it all again, really, would be my advice to people. But Jason, before I let you go, have there been any massive learnings for you through this process?
I think probably a bit of a tip back to the original episode in terms of insurance. So I have had another insurance issue. It's still, believe it or not, ongoing from my Brisbane place from about 12 months ago. Make sure you are insured. And when you're dealing with insurance companies, record everything, write it all down, who you spoke to, the times, the dates, because if push really does come to shove, you've got all that there to sort of back you up to help you with the claims, because it seems, unfortunately, like there are a lot of people that sort of miss out. So that's probably one of my biggest ones there. And then, like I sort of touched on earlier, if you are going to go down and get into this property investment space, know your numbers and make sure that you're comfortable, because if you do make the wrong decision or you spend too much and suddenly realize you can't afford it, that's going to set you back way, way more in the long run than if you had to just sat on the sidelines and sort of continued to build your buffer and worked out your plan and your strategy and which way you want to go, than just jumping at something because you can jump at something and making a bad mistake there. So definitely work out what you need to do, find some advice, some good advice, and build your team around you and go from there.
Jason, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a great episode. So great to catch up, and we'll have to get you back one sometime down the track. Best of luck with whatever happens next.
Thanks very much. Great to be here again. Hopefully I'll be on again later.
To everyone who is listening along, we hope you have enjoyed this episode. Like or review us on whatever platform that you do listen to your podcasts on. If you have any questions, reach out, editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Stay up to date with us for all the latest news on our website. Subscribe if you haven't already, smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. And that is all we have time for today. Until next episode, stay safe and well wherever you're listening from. Bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.